The truth about ultra processed foods, health washing, food scientists, marketing, and 3 processed foods to avoid. So, what are ultra processed foods? Ultra processed foods are classified as been heavily processed from the original state. They usually contain sugar or vegetable oil. Minimally processed food is different because it only has a few steps of processing, such as olive oil, where you're just crushing the olives pretty much. Every single molecule of food that you eat impacts your genetic expression. A hunter-gatherer should be able to recognize the food that you eat, such as meat, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, grains. All these have been used for a very long time, obviously. And of course, just because it's a real food doesn't mean it's right for you. Doesn't mean that it's going to be healthy for you. Depends on your unique state of health, your goals, and all that. So, an example would be, say, vegetable oils, which is probably the number one thing to avoid. So the thing with that is it takes 40 to 100 steps just to get processed. Each one of them requiring their own factories, bleaching, degumming, deodorizing, so all these things that every sense of the word is an ultra processed food, something that our body has no resonance with. If you take a hunter gatherer and show him Lucky Charms, he has no idea what the fuck that is. But if you take him and show him some steak, he obviously knows what it is. There's a concept called health washing, and this is a thing that marketers use to make something that is not healthy appear healthy, like gluten-free or heart healthy, things like that, right? Or if something is sugar-free, but yet there's artificial sweeteners in there that have been proven over and over again to be neurotoxic, been proven to spike your insulin, pretty much the same, because you can't trick the body. If your body detects sweetness like that, the insulin is actually going to spike, even if it's not actual, quote, real sugar. And real sugar is going to be more healthy because our body's been exposed to that for millions of years. As opposed to these artificial chemicals that are made in the lab last week. And when we think of something healthy, based on marketing, we're going to consume that for a long time, right? We think we're doing our things good. We think we're being healthy, but just marketing. Now, there are a lot of things that food scientists do to mimic flavor and kind of make you addicted to their product. And in the 1950s, there's a device called a gas chromatograph. And this device is used to detect substances in minute amounts. Basically, flavor exists in small quantities in food, like parts per trillion. And this thing volatilizes the chemicals in the food and puts them into a coil. In the coil, they arrange in their constituent parts. And then they analyze them using a mass spectrometry, which allows them to create flavor. So that's basically how this device works. But in real food, food is supposed to taste good because it indicates nutrients. Real food is supposed to taste good, and it's an indicator of certain nutrients. But food is less flavorful these days because there's a lot less nutrients due to soil depletion, things like that. And when we're so hooked on ultra-processed food and we're so used to hammering that sugar all the time, real food starts to get less pleasurable. Just like porn, for example. If you keep watching that, the real thing isn't going to really matter as much because you're hooked on some nonsense. Look, billions of dollars are spent every single year on food marketing. Also, big food funds many organizations such as the FDA and other organizations to recommend their products. Kids are especially targeted, and the term they use is called a heavy user, which means that someone uses a ton of the product and they start from a young age. They'd rather have more heavy users than more customers. They also fund research known as epidemiology, which is observational research and is designed to form a hypothesis, then which you go test in a clinical trial. All right, and then based on the funding and the sourcing, clinical trials can prove causation. But even though all the journals they're kind of funded by big pharma, so you just gotta be careful with that sometimes. So this is how soda industries, they kind of show the research not to have obesity being caused by their products. When you look at third-party research, third-party clinical trials, we know that it does cause obesity. So you gotta look at those examples sometimes and just listen to your common sense. So what are some ultra-processed foods to avoid? I mentioned before, number one is vegetable oil, which is really a marketing term because none of these are vegetable oils. You got corn, canola, cottonseed, safflower, sunflower, and soybean. Those are the 6 that are really used. And sometimes they use grapeseed or oat oil, but those are the 6 ones. And as you notice, they're not really vegetables, they're grains and seeds. So it's kind of another health washing thing that they use to make it sound healthy, but it's not. And Eating these foods themselves are fine, depending on your state of health and, again, who you are. But it's when you make these highly processed industrialized oils that cause all the damage. And these oils contain a substantial amount of polyunsaturated fat, which is very unstable, very heat unstable, which means that it can be oxidized very easily. But the process for these oils to be made is rooted in very high heat, so they're kind of rancid off the shelf anyways. High oxidation. And a quick point on smoke point versus the type of fat for cooking oils, like smoke point, it doesn't have much to do with your health at all. It's really just a culinary thing. It's kind of like a almost marketing in a way, but it's kind of a moot point. What really determines the quality and health of the oil under pressure is the type of fat. Like you got saturated fat, monounsaturated fat, and polyunsaturated fat. On a molecular level, fat is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, CHO. Now, saturated fat has all double bonds, so there's no room for oxygen to take place, which means that it's very stable under pressure. Monounsaturated fat has one single bond, which means that there's a single place for oxygen to take place. Polyunsaturated fat means that there's multiple places, which is the most susceptible to oxidation and is less heat stable. So if using things like butter, coconut oil, they're going to be the most adaptable under high heat. Number 2 is sugar, which has been around for a long time. The problem is the way it's processed these days and the consumption. Like the average American consumes about 150 pounds of added sugar a year, not including the ones that are already present in the food. Sugar is the number one thing that raises insulin, and all carbs can be broken down into sugar. Insulin is the body's number one fat storing hormone. It's important to keep this in check because the more insulin spikes we have in a day can be a big contributor to chronic disease, and especially the metabolism and all that. So we want to keep our glucose levels in check. Like cortisol raises blood glucose as well. Something I do and is very beneficial for a lot of people is saving all your carbohydrates at the end of the day, or the majority of them, like berries, potatoes, carrots, things like that. This helps replenish your glycogen stores at night. Actually helps you sleep better. Conversion to serotonin and melatonin helps exercise recovery and getting deeper levels of sleep. May not work for everyone, but it's something worth trying, and it keeps your glucose level stable throughout the day. Another thing with sugar is that it can create advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, which is basically sugar binding to protein in your body and damaging them, causing oxidative stress and other inflammatory markers to go up. Number 3 I'm going to add here is fake meat, because I've not talked about this yet. And this is basically a meat alternative that makes plants and designed to taste like meat. So we have the Impossible Burger. If you want to read the ingredients, it's basically soy protein concentrate, water, sunflower oil, which is vegetable oil. You got coconut oil, natural flavors. And then you got 2% of methyl cellulose, cultured dextrose, food starch, modified yeast, soy legohemoglobin, salt mixed with topicals, and soy protein isolate. The problem with this bullshit is that it's been touted as healthier than meat, which has been used for millions of years. And of course you got Billy G behind this, right? And his synthetic meat project. Then you got Beyond Burger, which is water, pea protein, expeller, canola oil. You got refined coconut oil, rice protein, natural flavors, dried yeast, cocoa butter. Methyl cellulose contains less than 1% of potato starch, potassium chloride, beet juice, color, apple extract, pomegranate, sunflower and vinegar, lemon, juice concentrate, vitamins, minerals, and other artificial flavors. So they also add a lot of coloring and additives to the ingredients so they can actually look and taste like meat. Like, if we're trying to avoid the thing, why are we trying to create something that's so much like it? It makes no sense. Billy G, by the way, he owns more farmland than anyone in the entire world. Just throwing that out there. I've actually studied the process of how this is made. It's kind of frightening, like the soy-led hemoglobin, for example. They had these like food extractors, like these food power plants, and you just take them to the process. They also try to throw a spin on it, like butter-free environment, because the cows and basically carbon emissions and all that. Again, these are things that are thrown out there by big food processors such as Monsanto and all that. It's just not true. It's kind of like the soda industry thing I mentioned before. If you actually look at real regenerative agriculture, it adds to the environment, takes away the emissions and all that. We have enough to go around. It's just another thing that we throw out there. It's just nonsense. The regenerative farmers know this, and We actually grow more land. We have more fertile land the more we do this. That's why it's called regenerative. I'll do a show on this in the future, just kind of throwing it out there at the moment. Another problem is we try to take science sometimes and try to create the real thing. But we never can substitute what is actually real. If you want to really got to do what is real and find a way that make it happen. Alright everyone, thank you for tuning into the show. For more, you can head over to anthonygastella.com for articles, coaching, and other free resources. Also, if you can, leave a review for the show, let people know what you think, and I would appreciate that so much. Support the mission of freedom. Thanks for being on this mission with me, and I promise to give you more powerful, empowering, great content to help transform your life. Thanks for tuning in.